Pascal. You are now rocking with that dude Pascal. We be going wild, Haitian in the building, so original. Got the haters catching feelings. Get your hands up to the ceiling and keep them held high. Cause St. Louis isn't ready. Forget about it, goodbye. Hold on, we just saying hi. Five somebody rise up. Weekdays, catch us live. Somebody, let's go.
Good afternoon. Good evening and good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Pascal Show. Welcome back for all y'all who have who are just coming here back after we just got done talking about this crazy new developments and unearthing going on in Oklahoma, Henrietta, Oklahoma right now. It's been absolutely insane. But we are here for this new piece of information, guys, that I think a lot of us are shocked about. I mean, I am. I'm sure some other people who have been watching this and know how the legal things go might be feeling a little bit differently about this. But I'm going to be honest, I'm shocked. I'm surprised. But I'm also asking, what the hell does this all mean? And I know a lot of us are wondering the same doggone thing. This is the reason why I wanted to bring on our good friend, Andrea Burkhart, to talk about this. We are going to be bringing her on here in just a second. But at the same time, what the hell does this all mean? Does it mean that the preliminary hearing is gone and we ain't going to be seeing a preliminary hearing on June 26th anymore? Does this mean that how screwed is the defense or how screwed is prosecution? These are the questions that I have, at least for myself right now. And I know you guys have a bunch of them, okay? So if you guys have any burning questions, we will pull out those questions, especially if they are super chats. We will make sure those questions are answered in this very, very special impromptu live discussion on this breaking news, okay? We are going to get into this really quick, so do me a favor, hit that like button down below, send it past 300 likes as you guys start to file in. That would really mean the world to me. And for those of y'all who haven't done it yet, I don't know what's holding you back. Hit that subscribe button, all right? Nuke it. That would really, really mean the world to me, all right? And of course, hit that notification bell, set it to all so that you know whenever I go live, whenever I upload, because it is random. And of course, if you feel like just supporting the channel, please hit that join button and become a member of the family. That would be greatly appreciated. It helps keep the lights on, especially when I talk about stories that may not get the traction like they should, okay? Because of the topic or the subject matters that are wrapped around in that video, okay? So that would be greatly appreciated as well. Anyway, we got to get into this, guys. We all know why we're here. We all know why we're in this conversation. We all are kind of, I feel like all of us are going, what? What? Why is this all going down? Why is this popping off? I think a lot of us are very confused right now. Understandably, I'm right there with you. I don't know what this all means. And this is the reason why I'm bringing on our good friend of the show. All right. Shoot, she a family member now. She family now. Please welcome back Andrea Burkhart. Hello, Andrea. How you doing?
Hey, Pascal. I just want you to know I cook great, so I'll be bringing some good stuff to the cookout.
Woo, yeah. Okay, see that. Now we can be friends. Now we can be friends. Yes. Okay. I'm with it all day long. I'm with it all day. You are more than welcome to the cookout anytime. Okay. Now, especially that wonderful brain of yours. So please explain to us. Well, actually, before we go into everything, okay, there's some interesting information, okay? So I got to give you guys the storyline, right? This is kind of how I woke up this morning, okay? I woke up this morning to this tweet, okay? Ashley Banfield put out a tweet that everybody and their mama is losing their mind over. And understandably, okay, she says, breaking news on Brian Kohberger. Source tells me. So this is a source. This isn't, it's just a source from what we understand, unless it's been confirmed. But source tells me the Idaho 4 suspect has been indicted by a secret grand jury in Moscow, Idaho. Moscow, Idaho. He will be arraigned on Monday morning in district court. There will no longer be a preliminary hearing on June 26th. Now, of course, as we all have been sitting here waiting patiently, not really. We've been waiting at bated breath. Let's keep it real for June 26th to happen. Well, you all can just stop waiting to exhale. Okay, don't even be wasting your time. Do not wait to exhale, Angela Bassett. Just let it out. Okay, because June 26th is not happening no more. Okay, guys. So we saw that. I woke up with that information. Everybody and their mama's losing their doggone minds. Hopefully we can settle your minds and settle your thoughts on everything here in just a minute. But when they said sources say, that's what was being sent out. But then they put out this. This is from NBC News. They said he's been indicted by a grand jury. Okay. So the Idaho grand jury has indicted the man suspected in the slayings for the four college students in November, paving the way for an arraignment on M charges. The preliminary hearing in this case against BK was originally scheduled for next month, following his arrest in December for 4 counts of first-degree M and burglary for allegedly breaking into a Moscow, Idaho home with the intent to commit a felony. Now, but the prosecutor's decision to impanel a grand jury, which was not anticipated, allows the state to avoid the week-long preliminary hearing that would be required. Would be required it to present evidence before a judge, as well as permit the defense counsel to cross-examine witnesses. Now, obviously, there's a lot of information here, which we have been talking about this for months and months on end. But again, this is all some very, very surprisingly crazy information about this secret grand jury. And now he's been indicted by this grand jury. And now we're not doing the preliminary hearing anymore in June 26th. For all of us, some of us are thinking, oh, the defense is screwed. And then there's other people who are thinking, nah, this dude, nah, this is not good for prosecution. Let me ask a lawyer that knows these things. First and foremost, what does this indictment mean exactly?
So in the state of Idaho, a felony criminal charge can be brought in one of two ways. One is by the prosecuting attorney filing an information alleging that the crime has been committed and then presenting evidence at the preliminary hearing that's sufficient to establish probable cause to support those charges. Alternatively, they can proceed by indictment with a grand jury. So there's nothing in the rules that says they only have to do one or the other. It's not super common, but it's also not really unheard of that a prosecutor will start by charging a case by information and then go and get what's kind of conventionally called a superseding indictment, meaning that because the grand jury has returned the indictment, it has superseded the original charging information. Therefore, there's no necessity, no reason to go forward with the preliminary hearing. So that's apparently what has happened here. That information did get confirmed, I saw, by a local reporter, Morgan Romero, who confirmed it with the Latah County clerk's office. So it does appear to be good information that there has been an indictment, and all of this is basically as reported.
So, okay. So is it a thing where, of course, just correct me if I'm like repeating something or just sounding dumb. But I am a regular guy here. Is there any evidence that could have sparked this new indictment? Is there anything that could have been like a smoking gun, piece of evidence, something like that? Could there have been something that would have caused them to say, okay, let's surpass all this stuff. Let's do this instead.
It's certainly possible. We don't know, of course, what the thought process is behind the decision to proceed this way. However, My thought on it is that given the rapidity with which the arrest unfolded, that information was all obtained, and they wanted to be able to get a quick arrest. That to me is the justification for proceeding initially by information, because it takes time to convene a grand jury, present all of the evidence, get the indictment. And if you have somebody that you sincerely believe is a a multiple murderer at large, you want to be able to go arrest that person immediately and not wait out the process. So it doesn't surprise me that given those circumstances, they did proceed initially by information here. Why they then chose to take it to the grand jury, there are a lot of trade-offs with both decisions. And so, it's impossible to read too much into it because there are possibilities that could go either way. One possibility is certainly that the prosecution doesn't have a good case. And if there is a preliminary hearing, that's open to the public. So there's going to be a lot more than information available about what the state's evidence is, which is what we were all kind of looking forward to. If that's not particularly strong evidence, the prosecutor may not want that out there in the public awareness, at this stage of the case. But alternatively, when they have a preliminary hearing, it gives the defense attorney an opportunity, number one, to present their own evidence, right? So they get to kind of preview the defense, but also to cross-examine the state's witnesses, challenge the state's evidence. It basically gives them a dry run for what they're going to need to be able to do at trial. It's like a dress rehearsal. So the preliminary hearing is strategically advantageous for the defense in that respect. Choosing to proceed with the grand jury takes away that strategic advantage. Now they don't get to cross-examine the witnesses once and see how they do, and then alter their strategy for trial later on. So very hard to read too much into it, other than just the bare facts of now we know we are not going to get a public hearing where this evidence is laid out. So given the gag order, we're probably going to be sitting tight until trial.
Oh my Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, but then I heard something along the lines of maybe that they will be bringing cameras into this. Can they do that? Is that a thing? I don't think I've ever seen something like that before. Have we? Ever?
Yeah, they did. They had cameras in for his first appearance in front of Judge Marshall. So it is something that they're allowed to do in Idaho. It is discretionary with the judge. We'll see what the decision is. I'm sure that the request is going to be made. But given the interest in this case and the fact that they have already, at least with that type of preliminary hearing, sort of set the precedent of determining that the cameras are going to be okay, seems like a real possibility to me.
Okay. Now one thing, I saw this in a comment. Okay. On a post. So I wanted to pull this up, and maybe it can give us a better understanding of what to expect here. But it says here, grand jury, and this is what they said. Like they Googled this, and through Google, they said it said this. So grand jury proceedings are secret in accordance to Rules 6E of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. No judge is present. The proceedings are led by a prosecutor. And the defendant has no right to present his case, or, in parentheses, in many instances, to be informed of the proceedings at all. Is that accurate, or is that completely off?
No, it's generally accurate. So we're not operating under the federal rules in this particular case. We're operating under the Idaho rules and the Idaho Criminal Code. There's a number of statutes and different rules that apply to the grand jury proceedings, but they are essentially the same as what this is reporting for the federal rules. It is a proceeding that the district judge convenes the grand jury, and so is kind of responsible for it in that respect, but is not present, doesn't preside over it. The way it works in Idaho is that the grand jury consists of 16 people that are just basically the first 16 people that are on the master list of potential jurors for that county, meaning the names they've pulled off of voter registrations and driver's licenses and things like that. And from those, they will elect a presiding juror, the person who's in charge. And so under Idaho's system, that presiding juror has quite a bit of authority to decide how things are going to go. In a lot of cases, the prosecutor is kind of the boss of the grand jury. In this particular system, the way that it's written, the grand jury, the presiding juror at least, has some kind of authority over the prosecutor. Like they can tell the prosecutor, we want more evidence on this. We want you to go get that. We want you to, find and present this witness and so forth. So, that part of it can be a little bit flexible, but with respect to the defendant not having the right to be present, yes. The defendant not having the right to necessarily even know about it, yes. Grand jury proceedings are confidential. That's why we are just hearing about this now for the first time.
Man, okay. So then, this is just okay. Is this bad or is this good for the defense?
It's hard to say, without knowing really what was going on behind closed doors. I don't like it personally, just because I tend to favor transparency in pretty much all matters of government. I'm not a fan of tyrants, and the more that people in power get to kind of hide what's going on with their process, the more they are acting like little petty monarchs. So that's not my style. I would prefer for this to be open, especially given that there has obviously been so much publicity in this case already. Before the gag order was in place, we were hearing a lot of details that by and large were leaks coming from the state. They were not, information that was favorable to Brian Kohberger. So I don't feel that he particularly got a fair shake in that initial press kind of frenzy over getting information about it. So I can see the benefit to him of having a preliminary hearing, simply being that now the evidence is going to be public. Some of these things that there have been speculation about, theories and leaks about what might possibly be out there in terms of evidence, for that to be fully aired and put some of those questions to rest seems to me to be in his interest. That said, if the prosecutor does in fact have a devastating case against him, maybe it's better that that's not out there at this point in time. I just do have to wonder, though, if they did have that devastating case, it seems to me a bit strange to then go and present it behind closed doors. You would think the state would want that to be on the national stage.
Right. And I guess the other thing is that, when it comes to this kind of these proceedings, right? Mm-hmm. Because I feel like, for someone like myself, I'm used to one type of trial or whatever hearing, whatever you want to call it. You go into a room, you're in front of a judge, and a jury, typical Law and Order style, right? Yeah. If you guys watch the TV show or ever, or any court show, Matlock, Perry Mason, you name it, all those shows. Okay. I'm used to seeing that. What is the breakdown of this room then? Because if this is absolutely 110% correct, where they say no judge is present, then what is can you lay it out for us? Can you lay out what it would look like within this grand jury proceeding? What is it going to look like?
Yeah, well, okay. So first off, I should also disclaim that we don't do grand juries in Washington. Federal courts will do that sometime, but it's not part of our practice. So it's not something that I have ever, participated in. And of course, as defense counsel, I probably wouldn't anyway. I'm not going to get my invitation. But based on my understanding of the process from looking over the Idaho rules for it, The people in the room are basically going to be the 16 grand jurors, the prosecuting attorney. There may or may not be a clerk who is present to take notes of the proceedings, to kind of keep a agenda, so to speak, of the actions that's taken. And it also wouldn't be surprising to have a court reporter there, because there is expected to be a transcript produced of this proceeding. It could be electronically recorded and then transcribed later, or it could be a situation where they have the live court reporter, sitting there in the room. There's probably a bailiff, just like there is in most court proceedings, but that's going to be about it. The witnesses who will come and go for their part of the proceeding will get in. But yeah, there will not be defense counsel. There won't be a judge. There won't be an audience. It's a pretty closed and private proceeding.
Interesting. It's so very, very skeleton, very, very reduced, very, very small type of situation. Now, and of course, like Liz S just said, the grand juries are not unusual, are not that unusual. And I'm sure of that. I'm just saying, like, for myself and for all of us we're waiting for this preliminary hearing to happen on June 26th. Now, the fact that that's not happening anymore, and that there's a good possibility, if there's not going to be cameras in the room or anything of that sort, even audio of it, that we would have to wait for a whole other year, maybe, for the actual trial to go down. It does make you, it definitely takes some wind out of the sail, right? Of getting ready for this big moment, to see him walk and do all that stuff and see what happens inside that room. And yes, there's a good possibility that they could still cover this, but how big of a deal is this for the trial, for the upcoming trial? How big of a deal is this for that?
I don't know that it's necessarily a particularly big deal. It's really, like I said, these are two sides of the same coin. They're both options for the prosecutor to be able to move the case forward. And at the end of the day, it's going to be the evidence at trial that is really the dispositive question in the case anyway. So given that they did get the indictment, okay, the grand jury determined that there was enough information to justify finding probable cause to charge him with it. Don't know what that's based on, but it isn't really inconsistent with the judge having already made that determination, both for the arrest and then in the context of these various warrants that have been issued and so forth. So I don't see it as like a devastating loss for the defense in that sense. The finding of probable cause, while it's not a foregone conclusion, it is going to be the most likely outcome of a preliminary hearing. So the indictment doesn't really change that. It just really changes the process and who the decision maker is.
Interesting. And I get that this is not unusual. Or wait, maybe I read that wrong. I guess she said it was not that usual. I'm thinking she meant it's not that unusual, but
so my understanding is that in Idaho, so in general, most places where cases can be charged by information or indictment, they still typically are charged by information. It's just kind of easier to do it that way for a lot of different reasons. But it's also, when you're dealing, again, this is the most serious case that can be brought, under the law in a court in Idaho, pretty much anywhere, actually. It's not necessarily that surprising that they would go through the grand jury process to do that. They have a high volume of information. Well, I won't get into that. There are some differences with the procedure with the grand jury that I think are kind of a little bit interesting and something I think people should be aware of. So it doesn't require a unanimous verdict by the jury. That's one thing that people should know. It just requires a vote of 12 out of the 16. So it's a majority. That, of course, will be different than at trial. Trial is going to require a unanimous verdict. The standard, of course, is not beyond a reasonable doubt. It's just basically probable cause to support the charge. The other thing that I found looking through the Idaho rules that I thought was quite interesting, when we go to a jury trial, there's going to be an extensive process of, as we've talked about, questioning the jurors about prior knowledge that they may have of the case. And the reason for that is twofold. One, that they are going to be evaluating whether venue in Latah County is appropriate, or if there has simply been too much information, public information about the case, too many opinions formed for fair and objective jurors to be pulled from that county. There's also the fact that because the defense participates in the jury trial, they get to exercise peremptory challenges to the jurors, meaning, I don't like you for pretty much any reason other than, you can't discriminate against people for racial or, disability types of reasons, protected class types of reasons. But otherwise, you don't like somebody's answer, you don't like their worldview, you don't think they're necessarily going to be favorable to your side. Well, then you get a certain number of strikes to be able to remove those people from the jury. There's nothing like that going on in the grand jury process, and there doesn't really seem to be any process at all to necessarily limit it to people that have no knowledge of the case, that haven't heard of it before, haven't been reading about it in the newspaper and on Twitter and watching the YouTube interviews that we've been talking about and so forth. They basically just qualify the jury based on, are you a citizen? Are you within over the age of 18? Are you not a convicted felon? Or if you are a convicted felon, have you had your rights restored? And that's pretty much it. If those qualifications are cleared, then you're going to be qualified to be on the grand jury. And basically, like the first 16 people on the list that show up, you're going to be it. So that's quite a change as well from what we'll see at trial.
Interesting. Because I'm also, there's some documents and whatnot that have actually been released within this whole thing, and so I'm trying to grab some of it right now, just so we can actually see everything. Sorry. But so this is very interesting, nonetheless. I mean, this is all very surprising stuff. So I know that Sleuthy Goosey put something up, which I'm going to read here really quick. I'm not going to show it, but Sleuthy Goosey put up on about 15 minutes ago. The prosecutor filed a motion granted by the judge to seal the names of grand jury witnesses. He claims that they've received numerous complaints from prospective witnesses or their families' associates of harassment, threats, and intimidation. And that's very, very interesting as well. Let me show you guys that paperwork here real quick. And of course, this is why we got Andrea here to let us know if we're looking, obviously the typical document, but it says comes now the state of Idaho by and through the Latah County prosecuting attorney respectfully moves this court pursuant to Idaho Criminal Rules 6.2, 6.3, 6.5 for the order sealing the names of all witnesses examined before the grand jury herein. In support, so that's the other thing too. So you did touch on or tap on the whole thing about the gag order, right? And now we're looking at this, and they still had to put in a motion to seal the grand jury witnesses. Why is that? That's one thing I'm still trying to understand. If the gag order's there and all that, and of course, if it's not Bethany who they're trying to get from across state lines, why would they need to do this motion to seal the witnesses for this grand jury proceeding?
Well, obviously they think that this information is potentially jeopardizing those witnesses' safety and, potentially their willingness to cooperate. It's a little bit of a conundrum for me because we have limited information about who the prospective witnesses are, of course, just because we have limited information about the case in general. So we know that, of course, the roommates, Dylan and Bethany, are very likely to have been witnesses at the grand jury proceeding.
Sure.
They have, information that is pretty critical.
Or that informant.
Or that informant, whoever the informant is, the police officers that have been named, or that we know have been involved in the case. These are all potential people, perhaps the family members as well. It's hard to say. They are also potential witnesses in the case, not just for background about the victims, but about the time frame, their last communications, any information that they might have received from their family member, the victim, about contacts with suspicious people, things like that. So all of them are potential witnesses. We'd kind of be guessing about, who else there might be or how we would even be able to find that out. But of course, we have also seen there have been leaks. There continue to be leaks. We opened the show with a tweet from an unnamed source, so there is still, with that going on, the potential for some of this information, to get out and then to be made public and just put them in a position where there's a little bit more interest in that witness than that witness is going to be comfortable with.
Interesting. And of course, I understand that need of that. Because of course I get that I'm sure they're getting intimidated or they're getting threats, etc. I mean, even the people who are like the obvious star witnesses of this whole thing, two young ladies, Bethany, Dylan, definitely there's a lot of interest in what they know, what they don't know, etc. I'm sure they've been receiving all kinds of crazy stuff since day one. Or since the day that this man got arrested and all this information came out. So I do get the need to protect, but I thought that they would be protected throughout. Doesn't even matter if there's grand jury or the preliminary hearing. Whichever one it is, I thought that there would be more, right? I thought that there would be that the protection would have been throughout all this, right? So this is basically saying, like, whoever becomes is summoned to come in for this grand jury hearing or for this grand jury proceeding, they will remain anonymous to the public. I mean, correct? Their names are protected, so we won't hear anything about Bethany possibly going into to this grand jury proceeding. Same thing with Dylan or any other people, Jack, even any of the people that they feel that they want to have come in to testify, or would that speak? Okay, at this grand jury. That would just basically say we won't even know who's going in and who's going out, basically.
Well, so the reason why this comes up, it's specifically under Idaho Criminal Rule 6.5, which is describing the requirements of the indictment. Subsection C requires that the indictment must be in writing and have endorsed on it the names of all witnesses examined before the grand jury about the subject matter of the indictment. So it's not necessarily going to get into details or information about what the substance of their testimony was, but the Idaho rule does require that those witnesses be identified as part of the indictment itself. So this motion to seal is basically, it's responding to that. It's asking for kind of an exception. They will still list them, but they don't want that to be public given these, safety, I guess, concerns.
Gotcha. That was weird. There it is. So that's very, very interesting. Actually, I got a couple super chats that I want to get to real quick. So let's knock these out. Okay. Tamala, thank you so much for the 2. No preliminary. Yes, we already know that, but News Nation did report that earlier. Yes, they did. Thank you so much for that information. Grateful. Thank you so much for the 5. Hit the like button, y'all. Love the show. Thank you so much. I love you too. We love you too. I do appreciate that. We appreciate it. Okay, lady. Okay, lady. Thank you so much for the 5. Doesn't a grand jury usually meet when there are secret witnesses? That's what I think they're used for where I'm from. Is that what it is? That they usually meet whenever there is maybe a witness or witnesses they want to keep under wraps, and that's why they're doing this?
That can certainly be a reason why. But another common reason to use a grand jury, at least when you're using it from the outset and not like they did here, where they charged him first and then went to the grand jury. If they don't have a charge initially, and are just going to the grand jury has significant powers of investigation. They can issue subpoenas, they can require witnesses to be called into court. And so that can often be a reason for them to proceed by grand jury as well, because it basically allows them to have a lot more access to information in order to build the case through that process of presenting it to the grand jury.
Interesting. Okay. Well, hopefully that answers. But that is a good question, though. Let's keep it real. That is a very, very good question. I would think that too. Like, okay, maybe they have something on behalf of Brian Kohberger that they don't want to come out and say, that they are a star witness on behalf of Brian Kohberger, but they still want to get the truth out there, or their version of what happened that night out there. Without any public scrutiny. That could actually happen as well. Let's keep it real. And again, thank you guys all for the super chats. It really does mean a lot. Ladybug13, thank you so much for the 550 Canadian buckaroos. Would the gag order have to be would the gag order have been a factor? The prosecutor could present more to grand jury than in a hearing situation. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think absolutely that is very likely, to my mind, to have been a consideration here. Whether that's because for whatever reason we don't necessarily want this evidence public yet, whether it's to out of concern for witnesses like Bethany and Dylan, who are going to be subject to cross-examination. It hasn't really been that long since this stuff happened. That's, of course, not a fun thing to be going through. And then to do that, potentially on national television, I could see a prosecutor not necessarily wanting to subject their witnesses to something like that. So, yeah, I think the fact that the grand jury takes place behind closed doors is probably one of the driving considerations here. Of course, can't say for sure, but the bottom line is that's one of the biggest advantages of doing that way, is being to do it out of the public eye. And so given that the gag order is also keeping this stuff out of the public eye, it's just kind of a way for less of it to be made public until we get to the trial.
Okay. And another one. S Dubs, thank you so much for the 2. Andrea, would the Brady Giglio be disclosed to grand jury?
Yes. So this is a great question because we see from the grand jury rules that, of course, the defendant doesn't have the right to be present, to cross-examine witnesses, to present their own testimony. However, prosecutors have both ethical duties and obligations, just as a matter of due process of law, that if you have exculpatory information that you know about, you don't get to suppress that. You don't get to sit on that and hide it. It needs to be brought forward. So were there some information, Brady Giglio is dealing specifically with potentially exculpatory evidence. Yeah, you need to present that to the grand jury. And if you haven't done that, it does potentially open a door to a challenge to that indictment on the grounds that basically it's not valid because, the prosecutor didn't present everything that they would be required to do for the grand jury to fully and fairly understand the case.
Interesting. Because I know that the Giglio, the Brady Giglio Thizang is obviously a very big, very big very big piece of this for the defense as well. Basically saying obviously that they're accusing of some sort of tampering of something right? And yeah, that could cause. I mean, that is a good question. That could cause a reason to bring somebody in, because they might have some smoking gun information. What were you going to say, Andrea?
It could be. I was going to say with the Brady Giglio stuff as well, it is a little bit hard, of course, with that too, to read too much into it, because it can be something really big. It could be, information that somebody is accusing one of the officers of, say, planting evidence. That would be pretty big. That would be a big smoking gun. But it can also, and often is, be sometimes something that's fairly innocuous, something like, oh, within the last month at the lab, there was an issue with how certain results were being reported, and so they've had to go back and revise their procedures. It doesn't always necessarily mean that it's a huge big deal just because it's Brady Giglio. It just means it's something that tends to favor the defense, but whether it favors it in a huge way on some material issue, or it just slightly tends to favor them on something small, like having to do with a witness credibility, or like the authenticity of the lab test results. Things like that, aren't necessarily going to have the same impact as, hey, somebody's accused this officer of planting evidence, but they're both going to fall under this umbrella of Brady Giglio. So it's hard to say, is it big or is it not big?
Yeah. Oof. Now, there is another question I have, another super chat question I have that just popped up, and I think this is a good question too. Harlot Oscara, thank you so much for the 2. Isn't informant referring to the DNA from trash?
That's a good question.
Could it be?
I think it could be. It's not impossible, but I think it's unlikely, just given the context in which it came about. It came about through this challenge, this objection that the state was raising to producing the genealogical research, the genealogical evidence that led to presumably some preliminary identification of Brian Kohberger's family tree, being related to the DNA found on the sheath. So it is possible that that could relate to the DNA in the trash. If the DNA in the trash was what was submitted for familial, for the genetic analysis, then that would make a lot of sense. But there's reasons to think that's not it. And in part because of what we talked about yesterday, where you don't get to rely on familial evidence to arrest. You have to have a confirming sample that's direct to the target, a confirming sample, which is typically often obtained surreptitiously. That's what they did in the case with the Golden State Killer. Looks a lot like the process that they followed here with trying to get the trash so that they would be able to confirm that link to Brian Kohberger. The other reason, too, is because this type of genetic research takes quite a bit of time. Normally we could be talking, weeks or months. Maybe there might be some, accelerated process, but there was a very rapid turnover of that trash DNA, like 24 hours or something like that. To me, that makes it very unlikely that trash DNA is what was subjected to the genetic evaluation. So I suspect it was something that preceded that, but of course we just can't say for sure.
Yeah, you got a very good point there too. Now, because there's so many things that you can be using for different. These terms could be very fluid. They could mean different things. So I can see where Harlot was looking at this and going, "Oh, maybe they really meant this," And if it is just the DNA, I mean, obviously that informant ain't gonna talk,
and there does also appear to be maybe it's deliberate, but an effort on the part of the parties to not say a whole lot in their written filings. They're not going into a lot of detail about why this informant privilege would be appropriate under the circumstances. So
Mhm.
we're hoping to find out more about that on the motion to compel, because they're going to have to fill in the gaps for the judge so that the judge knows what are we here talking about. So maybe it does look like that hearing is still going to be held on Monday. It just might be in front of Judge now instead of Judge Marshall. So we'll have to see if that unfolds.
Yeah, like I said, this grand jury thing is still something new that I'm still trying to wrap my mind around.
Mhm.
To be completely honest, it is still very new.
Mhm.
And it's still very, very shocking to me. But I do want to share a few more things because I've been looking at these real time.
Mhm.
So bear with us, guys, because I'm getting these things and looking at these real time as Andrea's just pouring all kinds of knowledge into all of our ears. Okay. But now we do have some information. Shout out to the docket. If you're not following the docket, I don't know what you're missing. You're missing out on some good stuff. Okay, so go check out at Chasing Paper. Okay, 89 at Chasing Paper 89. Fantastic individual. He does a really great job at getting this information out here. Now they're saying that there, as of 36 minutes ago, he just put this up on his tweets. Okay, says notice of arraignment hearing for Brian Kohberger on May 22nd. So that's next Monday. Next Monday at 9 or 11 a.m. Okay, that they are doing the arraignment hearing. So can I ask you this? And maybe this is me being just dumb. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I'm just a regular guy. But what why is there going to be an arraignment of hearing if there's already a grand jury
Mhm.
proceeding already planned out? Does that make sense what I'm saying here? Because
Yes.
those are two separate things. This is not the same thing, correct?
Correct. So the
Okay.
arraignment, the arraignment is when he is going to be formally presented with the indictment and he's going to enter a plea on it. He hasn't actually entered a plea up to this point in time. He's just been, uh, held
Wait.
on.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but when we first saw him do his perp walk, he
Mhm.
walked into the room,
Mhm.
he pled not guilty during that time.
Mhm.
So they're giving him another shot. They're giving
To
him
the
another chance. Like,
indictment.
you sure you want to stay with not guilty? Like, is that what it is now?
It's to the indictment, because the information, he could go in and plead guilty if he wants to. It's
Uh-huh.
probably not that uncommon if you've got a plea deal worked out, that you would just go ahead and do it at that point in time. You don't necessarily have to. You can waive preliminary and proceed like that. But obviously, that's not how they're doing it in this case. So he does have to plead to that indictment now that it's been handed down, and that's primarily what he will be doing on Monday.
Interesting. So again, it'll be a situation of you sure?
Yeah.
You want to put that in?
Yeah.
You sure you still want to stick with that or no?
Yeah,
That's
giving
very
it
interesting.
some more thought. And one of the questions too is going to be, and maybe we'll find this out later today as the documents are coming out. We're going to get the
Yeah.
indictment, but the other piece of this case, of course, is the question of the death penalty, and that's a special allegation notice that has to be filed by the prosecuting attorney. They don't have to do it with the indictment, but given the time that has elapsed in this case, I would expect, if they're going to work out a plea to avoid the death penalty, they probably would have already done that.
Hmm.
Not to say it's impossible to do it later, but that's what I would expect. So I also think, then because of that, if we're going to be going forward with the case, they're probably going to, be prepared to file that notice. So that's just something to keep your eyes out for.
Interesting. And for those of y'all who are still kind of like rats, right? Especially the people who think Kohberger is guilty. If you are if you are riding on the side of him guilty, okay, this grand jury piece does not mean that he's walking. Doesn't mean that prosecutions dropped the ball or made some huge mistake. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean that at all. Am I getting that correct? Is that computing right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. We can't infer anything other than a grand jury thought, based on what they saw, they believe there's probable cause to charge him. We don't know if they thought that unanimously. We don't know if it was a narrow majority. We don't know if they, reached that conclusion really fast because there was such strong evidence. None of those details are available.
Yeah. And of course, so yes, there are more paperwork coming out here. I'm going to try to blow this up so you can see it too, because I know it's very fine print. Okay. But this is an order governing courthouse and courtroom conduct for the preliminary hearing. Okay. This is for Monday. Okay. So this order governs the courthouse and courtroom conduct and media activities in this case. This order shall supersede any prior order governing courthouse and courtroom conduct. So the court is mindful of the need to balance the constitutional right of the defendant to a fair hearing, the public's right to information in conjunction with the constitutional and statutory rights of the media to attend the proceedings. I'm going to come back to that in a second. The court's interest in maintaining order and an environment that permits all participants to focus on their responsibilities without undue distractions, and the court's interest in the safety of the public and court personnel, and the need to follow all Idaho Supreme Court orders as may be changed or amended from time to time, with these factors in mind pursuant to Idaho Court Administrative Rules, ICAR 45, 46B, and 49. So number two, I think that the number two, the public's right to information in conjunction with the constitutional and statutory rights of the media to attend the proceedings. That's one piece I think a lot of us are wondering. Okay, when it comes to this one that's coming up on Monday, our camera is going to be inside the room, right? Will it be available? That's one piece would like to know.
Scroll back up to be here.
There it is.
Pooled media seating. That is the indication that there's going to be a camera in there, and that they're going to treat it as a pool. So it's a common resource that video feed does suggest. Yeah, there's going to be a pool camera there.
Yeah, and the thing is okay. Again, this is a big deal. Okay, because now we're finally going to at least have a fly on the wall in that room. We at least get to see that. Now, when it comes to the grand jury proceedings, it's bupkis right now. I don't know. Do you know anything about that?
We are not going to find out about it. So the defense is going to be entitled to receive a transcript of the grand jury proceedings, but it's going to be subject to the gag order. It's going to be part of discovery. It's not a publicly filed thing unless for some reason it would need to be filed in support of a motion or something like that. So that stuff, we're not likely to hear anything about it.
Yes. So very, very interesting stuff, guys. And of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of stuff going in, just the restrictions, the requirements. I'll actually just show it to you guys so you guys can see that proof positive. Just, general public and additional media seating. Just, how to come in and how to get out. I mean, it's all just the typical stuff. No, of course, don't show up with food and beverages. This ain't a movie. You know what I'm saying? And definitely don't show up with any weapons. I mean, the hell's wrong with you? The number one spot you don't want to be showing up with weapons at is a place filled with cops. Just so you know, just a thought. Okay. But yes, obviously, as you guys can see, there's just normal types of ink. Just
behave yourselves, children, is what this order could say.
Exactly. It's like, use your common sense, idiots. Come in, don't bring any cameras, don't do anything stupid, no devices, no electronic devices or microphones, okay, no cameras. See what I'm saying? Just act like normal human beings and just be
cool, people.
Be cool.
Just
okay?
Be cool.
Be gentlemen and be ladies. Be adults, everybody. It's that simple. Now, there is this other one I wanted to show you guys too, just so you guys can see this.
Oh,
as
there it
well.
is, the indictment.
Here is the indictment itself. I wanted to make sure we saw that too. But
Great.
as you guys can see, say again, what did you say?
I said great.
Yes, let's see it. Let's see it in all of its glory. So this is page 1, but this says Brian Kohberger is accused by the grand jury of Latah by this indictment of the crimes of burglary. All right, I'm not going through all the codes. All right, but count 1, felony in count 1, murder in the first degree. All right, that's felony in count 2. Felony count 3 is all 3. 4. My bad. Of course, there's 4. 4 counts. Okay, 4 counts of first degree M. Okay, so that's what we have here. Then they say, okay, count 1, which we already know the breakdown of what these are. Okay, but they're accusing him of breaking into a place unlawfully. Okay, to commit a felony crime. Okay, but as you can see, this is part 1. Do you have anything to say on this? I'm going to pull up the other parts here in a second.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that really jumps out about it to me is that it is exactly the same thing as he was charged with in the information. Sometimes there are, differences, things evolve, things change, maybe they get new theories, whatever. Didn't do that in this case. So clearly their primary interest was just in, frankly, justifying those initial charges that they had decided to bring and going forward with them.
Yes. So of course you got count 2, 3, 4, and 5, all right here, and all of them are murder in the first. Okay, which we already know because of the Idaho 4. Everything from Madison, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan, all of them. Okay, so this is what the grand jury, or this is what the indictment for the grand jury proceedings is for. Okay, guys. Now, because I've been seeing a lot of people, and I know I keep circling back to this, but I just need to say it 15,000 times so that everybody understands. Okay, whatever side of the spectrum you are sitting on when it comes to this, if you're going, hey, there's not enough evidence against Brian Kohberger, there's he ain't the, or he can't be the only one, at least, right? Or you think they just got the wrong dude and this is one big cover up and he's just been framed. That this grand jury is not saying this proceeding, this movement does not mean that you're right. The other people on the other side of the spectrum, for those of y'all who are sitting there going, he's 110% guilty, him guilty, him guilty, him guilty, him guilty. Just because this grand jury proceedings is happening doesn't mean that you're right either. We're still at a stalemate. We are still right in the middle with nothing. Only thing is that now we may not get to even hear anything from this grand jury proceedings. And then
we're going to be sitting here with nothing for a lot longer now. and then now we might not hear anything for a whole doggone year. Yeah. Unless things just get leaked, from a source or from an anonymous voice that comes onto a show. Other than that, we're not going to get anything, guys. And that, to me, is the tragedy of this, of this news. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? I agree with that 100%. I was looking forward to the preliminary hearing as an opportunity for some of this speculation that has been rampant to, we'll never put it to bed. Of course, that's always going to be out there, but just, I feel like a lot of the reason why so much of that is going on and so much of like the interest in the witnesses and stuff that's referred to in this order to seal or this motion to seal is because of that information vacuum that we have. It's such a balancing act with the gag order. Of course, I appreciate that the defendant has the right to a fair trial, an impartial jury. It's very difficult to do that when you're in the middle of a media frenzy over the case. But at the same time, just there is obviously interest in it, and people do want to understand Of course, given the nature of this case, it's very serious, and questions that they have about it, people understandably want to know what the evidence is. And
Mhm.
so I do think that that is a disappointment. And I think it is, I'm not going to say harmful to the case necessarily, but it's just unfortunate. I think it does potentially undermine the public's trust in the proceeding when they can't see it unfold in front of them and be able to evaluate it for themselves. People are entitled to disagree with the
Absolutely.
outcomes of court proceedings, and so that's part of the importance of having it all be public so that we can debate it. And I do think that we've lost that by this decision.
Yeah. The other thing is, I don't think it even says. Do they even say a date of the actual proceedings
For the grand jury,
for the grand jury?
they do not. No. So we don't know how long this is going on. Theoretically,
Damn.
they could have convened the grand jury the same day they arrested him, and they've spent this whole time doing it.
Oh,
We just have no idea. They could have done it last week,
so
and done
this
it
could have
fast.
already.
We don't
So,
know.
so you're telling me that this grand jury thing could have already happened? You're telling me
Yeah,
that this
I
grand
mean,
jury thing could have already happened?
it could have
Really?
happened. They could have been deliberating for the past couple months, and only just returned the indictment. So we're only now finding out about it. We'll never know.
That's insane. That's insane. Sorry, I just got some information that I wanted to I'm waiting for it to get sent to me, and I'm gonna show it here. But obviously that's crazy though, right? That this could have already been happened. This already could have happened, guys. And now they're just going, oh yeah, by the way. But wouldn't that be very lazy to do something like that? For everyone out here that has been hotly anticipating June 26th, and if this proceeding had already happened, and now they're going, well, it's already been done, so we're not doing the preliminary hearing now, and they've been knowing this for weeks, that would be insane. Wouldn't that be?
Well, that would be insane, and that would also be something that would probably piss off the court quite a bit because you've wasted a lot of their time. You've
No
made
kidding.
made this situation unnecessarily burdensome. I have been looking through the rules to see if I can find out very quickly if there is a timeline for the information. Yes. Okay. So wait, no, that's something else. The time frame for the indictment to be sent to the district court once it has been found. I'm not seeing anything quickly, but my assumption would be that this is not something you're allowed to sit on. You get the indictment, you need to forward it to the court immediately. So I am assuming that is what happened, that this was a recent decision from the grand jury. We just don't know how long have they been thinking about it, how much evidence got presented to them, when did it start, and stuff like that.
Gotcha. And I feel like, yeah, I that would be insane. Okay. For all of us as well. That would be absolutely insane to say, oh yeah, this happened 2 months ago already.
Yeah.
So sorry guys, you guys have been anticipating June 26th. Guess what?
Yeah.
Not happening anymore. Man, there would be so many angry people. I feel like, yeah, the courts would be losing their minds going, what the hell are you doing? Why would you do that? Right.
Yes.
I got another question here. Super chat question. Thank you, Amy D. Appreciate the two. Why is this case so secretive? Why so secretive? Can you answer that at all?
That's a great
Andrea?
question, because from my perspective, it's largely cultural. This seems to be something that they just sort of do a little bit more in Idaho than they do in other places. In Washington, for example, we have a very, very strong public records law. We have very, very strong protections for open courts. It's extremely difficult to close courtrooms or to seal off parts of court records in the state of Washington. So our culture here is just kind of assuming that, this stuff can generally be made available. With Idaho, they don't necessarily, take that same perspective. They do close things off a little bit more. And it's just, I think, a philosophical difference, in that balance that we were talking about between he's got the right to a fair trial without the jury being unnecessarily tainted by all of this information. on the other hand, the public has a right to know what their government is doing, and being assured that, like, your government is keeping you safe from crimes like this because they've caught the right person.
Right.
So they've just come down on different sides of that equation for whatever reason.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. I got a question. Now,
Mhm.
we did talk about this yesterday, okay,
Mhm.
with the amount of stuff, the
Mhm.
evidence, the hours of content, the
Mhm.
51 gigs of 51
Terabytes,
terabytes. I'm
51
sorry,
terabytes.
51 gigs. What am I talking about? Like that's one photo. 51 terabytes of content. All that.
Mhm.
I did want to show you this again, just kind of a quick trip down memory lane. Okay,
Mhm.
because even so, prosecutors, they're saying they more than 20,000 pieces of evidence are given to Kohberger's attorneys, right? So we already know about all this stuff, all right? But we do know 10,000 pages of reports, okay, and written materials, over 10,000 photographs, 9,000, over 9,000 tips, 51 terabytes of audio visual media and digital materials. All are in the possession of both sides right now, both defense and prosecution. Could any of this stuff, and there's a reason why I'm bringing this up,
Mhm.
could any of this stuff, of all this material, be the reason why they are doing this grand jury proceedings instead of doing a preliminary hearing and just keeping it moving to June, 26?
Yeah, I mean, possibly if there's stuff in there that for whatever reason they don't want it out in public, and that could be any number of reasons. It could be because maybe it doesn't tend to be such a strong case against Brian Kohberger. It could be because there's personal and sensitive information that you want to do your best maybe to keep close to the vest until you absolutely have to put it out there. There's a lot of reasons why you would want to keep that private. The volume of it does kind of potentially speak to that as well. Now, discovery is always much, much, much broader than what actually gets presented in the court proceeding because it includes all the roads that you went down that didn't go anywhere. Your
Right.
investigative leads that didn't pay off are included in there. And we already know that there's probably a ton of those. I mean, 9,200 tips or something like that. That's a lot of effort that they went to that was not productive. So we don't know how much of that volume is actually, good information that they relied on and that they presented to the grand jury. But yes, that is a possibility that given that they had a week for the preliminary hearing, if they had, a massive volume of evidence that they needed to present, it could be that the week isn't really going to be enough. They were going to have to prioritize and cut things that could potentially be critical. I don't think that's likely just because I think the grand jury decision would have had to have been made quite some time ago just for the time frame to work for
Okay.
them to get it convened, get all of this stuff done. It is get all your witnesses, if you have to bring in Bethany from Nevada, to testify to the grand jury, you're not going to, call her up on the phone and be like, be here tomorrow. That type of thing takes some time to coordinate. So it's probably been in the works for quite some time.
Okay. I mean, even so, like when we talked about it yesterday with all the information that has come out,
Mhm.
like the fact that body cam footage wasn't turned on,
Mhm.
the DNA, which we did talk about with DNA, but
Mhm.
those kind of things of just kind of feeling like there could be foul play on
Mhm.
the law enforcement side and all that.
Mhm.
That's another question. Could this be a reason why there is a grand jury? Because I don't know, could there be a reason that would spark or inspire grand jury proceedings
Yeah,
to
you actually make
ignite?
a very good point because with the preliminary hearing, so we talked about the problem if there hypothetically was an illegal search in the trash, right? Like if they had intruded into the protected area of the home to get to that trash, that could be a problem. That could be grounds to move to suppress that. But that motion to suppress doesn't happen until they get held over and are in front of Judge. So There is, however, a provision in the rules for the preliminary hearings that says if the facts that are adduced at the preliminary hearing would show that some of this evidence should be suppressed, then the judge is not to rely on that in making their determination of probable cause. So it's not, you don't bring a motion to suppress, but the effect of it is essentially the same, that if you get it out there on the record that this was an illegal search, then the judge has to discount that, has to take that out of their mind. There is no similar, restriction on the grand jury based on anything that I saw. It does appear that they could potentially rely on evidence that would not ultimately be admissible at trial, but would be fine for purposes of supporting the indictment.
Interesting. Roger V. Kent just said, can he now rescind the speedy trial stuff?
Well, so he had waived his right to a speedy preliminary hearing, and in hindsight, I suppose we can question, whether that was a good call or not. Of course, I understand the reason why they did it. They wanted to have time to be prepared, but had they not done it, the state would have had to marshal everything it had and present it within 14 days of that first appearance. So it does, change the calculus a little bit if you had known that, well, the grand jury is going to be convened and they're just going to kind of undercut you on this anyway. Maybe they should have conditioned that waiver of speedy trial on, like, yes, we'll allow more time, but only on condition that you not run to grand jury in the interim. Something like that potentially could have happened, but it apparently did not. So he did waive his right to a speedy preliminary hearing. That's now essentially moot because there's not going to be one at all. So we will start over when he is arraigned. He has a right to a speedy trial as well. He has not waived that. In the state of Idaho, the speedy trial right is for 6 months from the date of arraignment. So that's when they're going to set the trial. He could waive again at this point. I suspect he will not. I'd expect it to be a situation where he would maintain his right to a speedy trial unless and until they're getting up to the trial date and see, wait, we need more time. We aren't prepared enough. At that point, then you go ahead and do the waiver and ask the court to continue the trial date. So I expect we're going to at least initially see a trial date within 6 months.
Okay. So so in other words, guys, we could be seeing something in the wintertime. For the actual trial to begin is the wintertime.
Theoretically possible. Theoretically possible.
Theoretically, all depending on when this grand jury proceeding actually does happen. Because if it happens within a week or so, then yeah. But it might be 2 months from now.
Well, the grand jury has happened. I mean, it's done. They have returned their indictment. That's what the indictment tells us, because
so
that is the product.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that is the product of the grand jury's decision. So they're done.
Okay.
And now we're moving back to the court. So he's entering his plea on it, and then trial within 6 months is the default, unless he waives it.
Unless he waives it. And he has how much time till he does that?
There's no time limit on it. He could theoretically do it the day of trial, and the judge could say, great, we're going to continue it. It's, they tend to not do that. They don't like when you do things at the last minute like that. But it's also not really uncommon to prepare for a trial in 6 months, realize 5 months in that things are taking a lot longer than you expected they were going to, and you're going to need more time. If it's a defense request, the judges tend to be pretty receptive to those. They're pretty accommodating of that because of the importance of your right to counsel and the need for your attorney to be able to fully investigate and prepare your defense. So they don't usually second guess the defense attorney if they say, given the nature of this case, need more time to be able to prepare.
Okay. Sorry, guys. I thought it was something that was to happen. But this already did happen.
Yes.
So my bad. Now I'm corrected. That's insane. So now we could look at 6 months from now. If he didn't say anything, now we can see maybe this trial will actually happen. So when would we find out about that date?
I expect we will get an initial trial setting on Monday at the arraignment.
Right.
Maybe not. It could be a situation where they take the arraignment and then they set a scheduling hearing, to try to sort that type of thing out. But it is very common to do it at this stage. They just go ahead and set it. And then it's, like I said, a little bit of a wait and see. They'll typically set things like a pretrial conference or a readiness conference or a status conference. There's all kinds of different names for these preliminary hearings, but they will usually set something, maybe a month out, a few weeks out, that's intended to be a confirmation of like, we're going forward, right? So that the clerk knows, okay, we're going to need to summon like 500 jurors into the court. Everybody is on the same page and prepared with what's going to happen, because you don't want to do that if it turns out, the next day you're going to continue that trial. So that's how I would expect this to unfold.
Yes, man. Like I said, this is some crazy information. And the fact that this has already gone down is also very, very surprising, I'm sure, for all of us as well, of course. But yeah, I thought that there was going to be a little bit more time before the actual proceedings became a thing. Mm-hmm. But that's absolutely insane. But
it's a done deal.
It's a done deal. So now that means that, hey, 6 months from now, maybe more, we can actually see the trial happen.
Yes. Yep. So the trial is going to happen.
So that's interesting, guys. That's very, very interesting. Again, this doesn't mean that, hey, this does not mean that Brian Kohberger is innocent and, the prosecution ain't got nothing, and it doesn't mean that the defense has nothing. It just means now we're just going to be proceeding into an actual trial. And we're going to see what these guys have, what they got, what defense and prosecution actually has. It's going to be pretty crazy to hear that information. But Andrea, I want to say thank you so much for being on. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Just clearing the air, making us understand a lot more about what has transpired, what has happened. Again, it sucks that we don't see anything on June 26th, but now we can just wait for the actual trial now. So they just kind of expedited that quickly, so we can just get straight to the actual trial. Do you have any last thoughts or any last words?
Well, I love your silver lining look at it. I agree with that. And I'll just go ahead and let you know too, that I am working on clearing my schedule for Monday so that I can get over to Moscow. Even if there is a live feed, I would like to be there in the courtroom to watch this process. So I'm going to do what I can to make that happen. And if I am able to do that, I will be in touch to let you know so we can chat about it.
Yes, I would love that. Oh my Lord, that'd be great. Please, let's talk. Let's see if we can set something up. That'd be really great to have you on to talk about what you saw in the courtroom, what we should expect, etc. That'd be really awesome. But really quick, guys, just so you guys know, a shameless plug. Okay, please go subscribe to Andrea Burkhart's YouTube channel. She is absolutely fantastic, as you already know. She is really knowledgeable. She's been here 2 times in a row this week, and she's been just slaying it with nothing but just knowledge. Okay, guys. So please go over, follow her. It's at A Burkhart Law. One word, A Burkhart Law. You can also follow her on Twitter. She has a fantastic Twitter as well, Twitter feed. So please go follow her over there. It's the same handle, at A Burkhart Law. Go follow her. She's fantastic. Okay. Andrea, thank you so much for being here. It really does mean a lot. And we will be talking to you soon. Okay?
We'll do it. Always a pleasure. And we'll see you soon.
See you. Bye. All right, guys. Oh man. So my bad on that. I misunderstood. I thought that this was a done deal, or this was about to happen. But this is why I bring on professionals to explain these things to little old me. So I do appreciate her coming on and just breaking it all the way down. No matter if it has happened or was about to happen, it's good to understand those things so that we know exactly what's going on. So, like I said, I appreciate her coming on and clarifying those things. Real talk. Anyway, guys, I do appreciate all y'all for being here. It really does mean a lot. Thank you so very much. Okay. Thank you. All right. got some crazy information, but still doesn't mean really anything. It just means by Monday, we'll be hearing what the next step is, what the next date is. It could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be 2 years. You never know. We will find out as soon as we waltz into Monday on this particular situation. But anyway, guys, okay, I appreciate all y'all for being here. Again, thank you guys so much for being here. Please do me a favor, hit that like button down below. Crush it, make it scream out your name. That would mean the world to me. Please do so. And also, please, if you haven't done that yet, actually, let me say that. Yeah, before we go into that, hit that like button, send it past 500 likes. Okay? A like doesn't cost a thing. It just helps the story, helps the stream. That would really mean a lot. Okay. And of course, let me say this too. If you haven't checked out my Shanquella Robinson video, please go and check it out. We have some new updates around her case. I'm trying to bring more awareness to her case, bring some justice for her family, for her and her family. There's some really crazy stuff that's going on. There could be a cover-up going on by the FBI. It is absolutely insane. Please go and check out that video. I posted it late last night. And I just want to get it out there so people can watch it and consume it. So please be sure to go and hit that video and check it out. That would really, really mean a lot. Okay. And for those of y'all who haven't hit that subscribe button yet, hey, hit it, crush it. That would really mean a lot. You know your boy's working hard out here in these streets to give you the content and the conversations that you need for the day. All right. Make sure you hit that notification bell, set it to all. And of course, I'd appreciate it if you want to hit that join button and become a member of the family. That would really mean the world to me. You know, these purple lights do not pay themselves. Okay. So thank you guys so much for being on again. I appreciate all y'all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. And I will be talking to you guys very, 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 very soon. I might be back on a little bit later on this afternoon with some breaking news because I'm still waiting on some information. When that information does drop, you're going to be hearing from me. Okay? So, and it has to do with Henrietta, Oklahoma. So I'll be on the look. I'll be keeping my eyes open on that. So you should too. Okay? So anyway, guys, it is time to get going. I'll be talking to you guys very soon. Be good to yourselves. Be good to one another. And I'll see you guys very soon. This is the Pascal Show. Bye.